Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. We are Berezha Security Group, and thanks all for joining us. It's our first time we are here, so we have this online event in English. So we suppose this initiative goes live. And my name is Natalie. I'm moderating this webinar. We are the BSG company, a cybersecurity consulting firm that you can roll the slides, please. We deliver application security, pen test, security consulting, and training services. I'm happy to introduce my colleagues. They are experts in cybersecurity, and today's speakers. It is Vlad Stiran and Andriy Varusha. They are well-known Ukrainian cybersecurity experts with numerous achievements, vast experience in cybersecurity and consulting, and you can see all the main info about them on these presentation slides. And today's presentation discussion is dedicated to a quite popular question of how to invest efficiently in cybersecurity. And then we will talk about how to evaluate the return on security investment. We've picked up this topic as it's really the hot theme, and we decided to show you some misconceptions that professionals typically meet. I guess this dispute will never finish between CEOs, CISOs, and other top management in your company, and all the information stakeholders and decision makers. So we really believe that today's discussion will be useful for you, and please participate and ask us more questions. So if you want to message us, we will have a questions and answers time, and you can message us in a QA section in the bottom of this chat, in the bottom of the screen through the webinar, and we will address them during this section. So the plan for today is as follows. So we will talk about the main difference between the business and security mindsets and how they view security investment and its effectiveness. And we will also share some useful tips and tricks regarding the security investment and resources you could use, you could have as for planning your cybersecurity program. And then we will go through your questions. And now I want to pass my microphone to the Andriy Varusha, and please welcome.
Thank you, Natalie. Hi, everyone. So yeah, probably we can move on to the next slide. Right, this one will be the good background for some of my initial thoughts I'd like to share with you. And I will start from defining a couple of key terms for our discussion. I'll try not to be too academic on this, because I do understand that the focus is not on the terms and definitions, but it would be really a pity if we don't understand each other because we just put different meaning to the same words. I do remember when someone puts too much attention arguing about terms, it does remind me of a fairy tale movie where a group of wise men, they were arguing heavily about the stick. One group said, okay, the stick has two ends, thus it's beginningless. The other group said, no, it has two beginnings, thus it's endless. And so they were keeping on arguing about endless and beginningless of the stick. I do hope we will not be like them, and we'll quickly go through these definitions and move on to the real essence of our topic. When we talk about something where we would like to understand how good we are or how well we perform, we tend to use two words, and you see them on the screen: effective and efficient. Effectiveness, efficiency. It's in my opinion, it's really important to understand the difference. And I'll explain how I treat it. I mean, I don't pretend to provide you with the ultimate truth, but for me, effectiveness is how well we reach the result. So which is intended. So for example, let's use a simple example. We have a door, we have a lock. The lock is intended to keep the door shut, right? And you shouldn't be able to open the door without a key. So that's the intended result. If the lock achieves this result, so you cannot open the door, then the lock is effective. So it reaches the effect it should have reached. And that's it. I mean, as simple as that. And efficiency, it's all about how much effort you have to put into achieving the result. Or you could put it vice versa. So how much of the result you can get for the same level of effort. So coming back to the example with the door and the lock, imagine you have two locks which are effective, but one costs X, the other one X double. So apparently the effort will be different, or the cost will be different, right? In the second case, it will be double as much in the first one. So the first is more efficient because it requires less effort. Also, here you see that even from the definition, it's kind of a ratio or fraction, which divides effort by some result, and we will get even more mathematical later on. But as of now, yeah, it's just the feeling for you that it usually is a percentage, because the fraction is some kind of a percentage, and or it may be some metrics, like, again, simple example, like kilometers per liter of the gasoline, or the vice versa, like in America, the miles per gallon. But whichever side you twist this fraction, actually it's all about the relationship between effort and the result. So in the effectiveness, you see that it's either discretional or binary, yes or no, locked, open, cannot open. With the efficiency, it's rather gradual. It can be anything from 0 to 100%. You may also here ask me, what about we hear the term effectiveness, for example, for the vaccine, right? And it's still in percentages, like the vaccine is 66% effective or 94%. And yeah, this yes, no, it refers to a single case, but if we're talking about a population of cases, like in the vaccination, then it becomes a gradual metric, because you just measure how many of the cases, or which portion of the cases are something is in which portion of the cases something is effective, like the vaccine. And this portion is the percentage metric of effectiveness. When we talk about efficiency, the context may become broader. I've mentioned that the lock may be effective, different costs, but think about, okay, you've placed the lock, it has some cost, you calculated it, but you also have the key and you have to manage the key, right? You have maybe to make some copies of the key. It's additional cost, and the total cost of ownership is actually more than just placing the lock on the door. It's a continuation of these considerations about efficiency. There might be even more broader context. So, okay, you put a lock on every door, each and every door. But the question is, does each door hide something sensitive? And if not, maybe you shouldn't have placed the lock there at all, because it's just a necessary cost. So when we talk a bit about efficiency, these kind of thoughts actually pop up. And before we move further, also the term investment, just to underline that when we talk about investment versus just simple expenses or spendings, we think about something which is of a considerable amount, which is long-term oriented, and this is spent dedicated to get some gain or some return, and that differentiates the investment from a simple spending. Understand these thresholds which I'm given right now, they're not defined by me, and it's actually on purpose, because each person or each organization will have their own thresholds. But the qualitative definition is there. Also, it's difficult to provide any type of operation as a criteria. So think of transportation expenses. Usually you would say it's expense, right? Even if it's important long term. For example, you go to a meeting with the customer, potential customer, and that's the deal breaker. I mean, that's the decision-making meeting. You take a taxi. So paying for the taxi will be an expense, even though it's enabler of something important long-term and which will give you the gain. But think about the same context, but let's say it's not a taxi, but it's a trip to the other side of the world. So it's quite a significant amount. Probably in the accounting, you will not be still able to capitalize. So it will still be your expense in accounting, but in your decision-making process, probably you will think of this as already as of an investment, because that's a significant amount, and it's for the good or for the sake of the future gains. So that's kind of logic you should apply when you think if it's investment or it's just expenses, and if it's expenses, probably everything else which we'll discuss further in this webinar will be not relevant for such a kind of expenses. It's a different logic. If we go further, Vlad, and probably show me the next slide, even one slide further, please. I think the order, yeah, I think it will be more logical to mention it right here. When I think about differences in mindset between the business person and the technical person, security person, even product person, engineering person, let's say so, I think for me, the difference is this effectiveness versus efficiency mindset. Although they may manifest themselves in different way, but the key is the technology people are focused on getting the result in a proper way, nice ways. But so for them, the key is the result. For the businessman, the key is the efficiency. So how much of the value he or she gets for the money. And I think the reason why sometimes people don't hear each other, and although both of them are saying like proper things and the logical things, is this angle of view, right? Because for some, the result is why they are doing something. For the others, the business and revenue, avoidance of loss, so business result is the key. And usually, in order for these people to become talking the same language, either something, unfortunately, something bad should happen with the business, like you will go through some breach or incident, and the business person will, in business terms, understand the impact. Like, now I understand, right? That cost me so much. Or the person who is trying to convince the business person will learn how to convert the result-oriented actions into business result-oriented actions, and how to do it. Actually, we will talk right now. So I think now it's good moment to go a slide back. Yeah, and so how do we convince that the investment makes sense? If we talk about investment in general, there is an indicator which is broadly used, and this is return on investment. You can see formula on the screen. Actually, there are two options or two variants of it. In one, you just put the net gain, which is here on the screen in the numerator, and the cost of investment or the amount of investment in denominator. It also can be an option when you put the whole cost plus gain in the numerator. In one case, it will be positive if it's above 0, in the other if it's above 1. It doesn't matter, right? It's just the matter of where the break-even point is. But on this option which you see on the screen, it will be 0. So everything above 0 will be positive, below 0 negative result of the investment. The indicator is straightforward, right? And usually for the business investment, it's also easy to calculate. You know how much money you have given, and then you just know how much you get, you have received in return. So like dollars versus dollars, and you have this indicator. Of course, it when calculated, it doesn't show the scale. So in one case, you can invest $100, get $500 back. So it will be like 5 times or 500% ROI. And in the other, it may be 1,000 and 1,500. It will be like 150. So when you compare percents, you don't tend to feel the scale of the options. But probably you will see the not only the end result, but the calculation. So it's not so counterintuitive. What's well, even not counterintuitive, but you have to remember what's not in this indicator is the time. It's nowhere here. You don't see anywhere time, right, in the formula. Because one option may be just may take just 1 year, and the other may take 10 years. And that's not incorporated into this indicator. There are others for decision making related to investments which take into account time. This is net present value NPV, or this may be the rate of return. But there is one but. People who decide on investments are usually non-mathematical mathematicians. But when we talk about time, usually this means compound interest, right? Year over year, you do some calculation of the interest, which means bringing the amount into power of something. And then when you need to calculate actually the amount to power of which you bring the figure, you have to do the reverse operation, which is logarithm. And this is too difficult for economical persons usually. So that's why ROI is still like the easiest one and most frequently used. Also, ROI as such doesn't take into account risks. You don't see here risks. Of course, you can incorporate them into the gain. So you can calculate gain already taking risk into account and probabilities, but usually it's not the case. So just keep in mind when people comparing ROI, it's most probably that risk is not taken into account. But ROI is a generic indicator. We are talking about security investments. There is one, but very important difference, right? When we talk about security investments, unless you are a security-related business and you do a security product or security services, then the investment actually in security will mean for you cost. You will not be able to link this investment to revenue, or it will be probably very difficult. But you should be able, whether you're CISO or the owner of the, or I don't know, the just manager, you should be able actually to justify the investment, you should be able to link this to some avoidance of loss. And that's the whole difference, but very important difference between ROI and the ROSI, which is return on security investment indications, because it's seen here on the slide easily that the difference is that instead of gain, you take the avoidance of potential losses, which is the annual loss expectancy and the mitigation ratio. So roughly saying, you understand what your loss would be without your investment, then you estimate what your residual loss would be after the investment. And yeah, we all understand that you cannot minimize it to zero, so there will be still some risk. And you divide it by investment. Cost of solution is written here, whatever. So the cost, direct or indirect, you have to spend for this result. And although sounds logical, right, and sounds again pretty simple because the mathematics is simple, but with the ROSI it's much more difficult. Why? Because, well, as I mentioned, with investment you gave cash, you received cash. It's easy to calculate. Here you have this potential losses, right, and avoidance. Even if they are not potential, if they happen to materialize, still it's difficult even to calculate actual losses. Why? Because unless this is some kind of fine, they are based on some estimation of lost alternatives. Your system is down, you've lost some revenue. How much? Well, you can estimate, but it's not a actual figure. I know you have data breach, your reputation is impacted. Probably you've lost some customers because of this. How many customers, how much would they have brought to you of revenue is just an estimate. And that's even for actual losses, right? You have to estimate. Not saying about the potential losses or potential losses before or after the investment. It's all some matter of judgment. But even though this is a matter of judgments and calculations and probabilities, still my standpoint and actually my advice is to do this exercise, to calculate, to estimate, because even though it may be not 100% precise, it's still better to have these calculations for decision-making process than not have them and do a best guess or use your gut feeling. Why? Because, well, by doing so, you actually estimate all the parts of this equation. Probably you come up to a different result than you would just do like this, yeah, catch the wind. But still, ROSI, even though it's a good indicator, yeah, let's go to Gordon-Loeb. I think that's the right slide here. Although it's a good indicator to compare the options or to understand if the option was good or not. So, for example, you might want the ROSI to be not less than 150% or 50% if you count from zero. Still, it doesn't give you the answer how much you have to invest. Right? It gives you just the answer, was the investment good or is it supposed to be good or not? In order to answer how much you should invest in your security, there were two guys, scientists, this Gordon and Loeb, and they have calculated using quite sophisticated mathematics, which we will not try to reproduce. They have calculated that and the answer is on the next slide, that the maximum amount you should invest into mitigation of particular risk or to avoid particular losses connected with particular asset is 37% of the expected losses. And it's maximum. So probably the average should be even below. And I think it's kind of aligned with what was before this model calculated was treated as a standard. I think there were just opinions, like one of the Schneier, that it should be something like 10% of the cost of the asset. I mean, if we calculate it, in the end, probably we'll have similar figures, but here this is kind of proven. But in reality, yeah, it's good. I mean, you have now the answer, you can calculate, but in reality, probably your budget, which you will get as a CISO or as even CIO or whoever is responsible for it, probably will be just an amount calculated maybe as percentage of revenue, maybe percentage of income, because security as well as IT is a support function in ordinary industry, right? It doesn't generate revenue, so it's cost center. Cost centers usually get budgets for the year, the maximum which they can, I don't know, prove or push for, and so on. And thus the equation in real life most probably for you will be, if you have this amount, how to prioritize it. And for prioritization, I think ROSI is pretty good thing if you calculate it quantitatively. The only thing to keep in mind for yourself and also for justification is the when you do this, when you take this avoidance of loss, don't take the same loss for different justifications, because then it very quickly becomes obvious that either you misunderstand the concept, right, or you just manipulate. For example, we have GDPR, right? The impact is known. It's up to 5% of revenue if it's a fine. So you can calculate this amount according to your business and say to your CEO, right? Hey, we have 100 million of revenue, so 4 million is what we risk. So whenever you come with something, you could use the same figure. Like, I want to implement IDS, it costs less than 4 million, so it's like justifiable. Then you come the next time and you say, okay, I want to implement MDM, and it's less than 4 million, it's justifiable. But when you will come the third time and use the same loss expected for avoidance of expected loss as the justification, probably you would be questioned. And from my experience, it's better not to lose the trustfulness, right, in these calculations. Once you lose it, once you're caught of some intended or unintended errors in it, it's much more difficult to regain the trust to your calculations than if you're starting from the scratch, just implementing this justification based on the economic numbers. So be careful here and try either to combine the projects if they follow the same target, if they aim to mitigate the same risk, or split the amount which you are show as a avoided loss somehow. Then it will be fair, and then it will be transparent, and then you will be able to use this ROSI as the criteria for prioritization of your efforts. Let me check. Yeah, I think that was the intro part, to have our clocks and watches set on the same wave with you. I hope it's done. Now I will ask Vlad to elaborate more on this Gordon-Loeb with some examples, how to calculate this maximum investment.
Yeah, thank you, Andrei. Do you hear me well? Because I'm not sure.
Yeah,
okay.
It's fine.
So basically the science stops here, right? Andrei made a great introduction, and everything I will share, except for this slide, of course, is just the practical implementation of Gordon-Loeb rule, is based on my observations, experience, and yeah, expert intuition, I guess, right? So first of all, let's see how the Gordon-Loeb rule sounds and applies in practice. It's a percentage of annual expected loss, right? But you have to take into account what this loss comprises of, right? It's not just something that will be definitely lost. It's a risk. So something can be lost or can be not lost. Certainly nothing can be gained, but this percentage of probability that applies to this loss, it's I wouldn't say that it's a stochastic value, but it's quite it varies. right? So depending on the attack scenario or the incident probability or the sophistication of the threat, the loss can vary based on how often this stuff happens in the wild. And there are actually two values, yeah, that make up this complex probability. This probability P is a product of two P's, right? P1 is how often it happens. So what's the probability of it happening to you? Yeah, and the second one, P2, is the probability of it being successful once it happens. Once it happens to you, yeah, and successfully. This is what this probability, this complex probability P capital means. So again, you can take into account these two values in different ways. You can find them online. You can listen to the media, which is not the best way to get your probability figures. But once you get them, you take how often it happens. What's the probability of it happening? Yeah, which changes with time. For instance, probability of ransomware 5 years ago was much lower than today. And that's not just the media effect, right? It really happens much more and much frequently than 5 years ago. So today we take this probability P1 of ransomware incidents happening to companies. And when these attempts are made, right, when someone even breaches your security and leaves for a couple of months or even years, buried and trenched in your infrastructure, waiting for the right time to actually ransomware you, yeah, this all doesn't apply as loss. This is already a breach. This is an incident. You can detect and try to mitigate that, but that's not loss yet. Loss becomes apparent when they basically encrypt everything and demand Bitcoin, right? So these are two separate parts of the same probability value, same variable. And this multiplied by your loss, monetary loss expected, and the Gordon-Loeb ratio of 37% gives you the reasonable amount of investment into mitigating this one particular attack scenario. So this simple math that Andrei has just presented, it is complicated by the number of different ways something can go wrong with your data, with your infrastructure, with your business, your reputation, your licensing policy, whatever, right? So you have to take it into account. Before you apply this math, you have to have everything on the table. And this is called threat modeling, and we'll be talking about it in bigger detail very soon. So before we leave you with all that preliminary, yeah, all that prior academic knowledge alone, and the point you in the directions where you can get much more information about these topics, I want to warn you, right? So everyone is aware about the iron triangle. Is it the right name for it? Iron triangle of quality, time, and cost, yeah, and price in project management. The same applies, a very similar model applies to security. Once you make everything very, 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 very secure, it basically becomes non-functional or unusable, right? So you have to keep it somewhere in between of these three interconnected and very much glued parameters of any process, application, product, system, or model whatsoever, right? So you have to think about it before you, as Andrei said, before you insist on your security budget, because if you are not in security business, this is most probably a cost center to your organization. And if you are overly successful in extending it beyond reasonable boundaries, you will actually harm your stakeholders. Okay, so this is the main idea here. Now, when you know that, we can leave you free you will get the slides, you will get the sources of information that are much more capable and much more detailed in everything that we just described. However, it will take you 50 times more time to learn all of them. And this was just the gist, just the digest. I would personally recommend the course taught by Russ Anderson on edX. It's Security Economics 101. It's totally and absolutely recommended to every CISO. Not a business leader, because yeah, they have their own stuff, but CISO have to learn that and learn it well in order to be able to discuss these concepts with the business people. Okay, so let's now get to the fresh meat. Yeah, what you can apply to all these models in order for them to be efficient or effective. Effective in your business, or is efficient a better word? Andrei?
Actually, yeah, I had this and I forgot to say that if we're talking about the investment, we can use both. Just we need to differentiate. If we say effective investment, it means that the return is more than the investment. If you say efficient, it means it's maximum.
How much?
Yeah, like it's the maximum you can get out of the
investments. Let's stick with optimal. We need you to be optimal, right? So this stuff shouldn't break. This balance shouldn't be harmed. Yeah. So you have to be optimal in your investment. In order to do that, you need to apply the math that we just learned together. And in order to put variables in this math and into these equations, you can use data. The worst possible source of data is what? Is media. Yeah, mass media is a very bad source of objective information just because they over-report dramatic events. However, the irony of the historic irony of the situation we are in now is that they really optimally report on ransomware because it's the main and the ugliest problem in the industry right now. But if you want objective data, you can go and take some historic reference from this awesome source. Information is beautiful as a general tool for visualization of different data sets. And there is data sets on world's biggest data breaches and hacks. And you must have it in your bookmarks, right? So this is a very useful way to show yourself and then others what happens in the world. What breaches happen to which companies and to what extent they harm them. This is a really unique and authoritative source of this kind of information, and it's good to browse through it once in a while. It's updated, I guess, monthly, and it's just hilarious. All these bubbles are moving, they are clickable, there is some digest of what happened in each particular incident, and there are links to noteworthy sources that write those incidents up in various news outlets. Most of them are credible. So then there is Statista. Personally, I do not use that very much, but when it comes to statistical data, that's your final stop. You can basically find anything there, and cybercrime and security figures are also incorporated into this resource. There is a Center for Strategic and International Studies, which is an example of a public-private partnership, as far as I remember. Is that correct, Andrei? So these guys report on what's happening on the incident scene. So you can refer to that. If GDPR is your topic, if it's your pain, if it's your nemesis, you have to be aware of what's going on this website. It's the GDPR enforcement tracker, which is a good way to stay up to date with the GDPR enforcement and execution. And it starts with the incidents, with the breaches being reported and the expected loss in terms of fines being assessed way before they are actually applied as direct penalties, right? So it's very, for me, it's crucial to demonstrate to people that what's reported in the media as an initial penalty is almost never the final fee that is submitted to regulate that particular breach. The amount of money can change dramatically, like 10-fold or 100-fold, based on long way of legal investigations and law drama, right? So it's all very interesting and dramatic, but in the end, when it happens, and it's recorded here is a fine taking from an entity, and yeah, it's all very sad. Then there is infamous data breach investigation report, which is a topic we don't stop arguing about, but it's nevertheless, it's not an ideal source of information, but it's the best the industry has to offer, right? It's a consensus of people that run more than 5,000 investigations over cybersecurity incidents through a given year, right? So this is like a consensus we cannot ignore, and the trends showcased here, they should be used and should be incorporated into your model, because yeah, again, no model is perfect, but at least some of them work, and this one has proven to work pretty well. Then when we are talking about not incidents, but some potential stuff that may happen to you, some risks that can manifest themselves as incidents, but have not done so, there are vulnerabilities. Yeah, and the best source for vulnerability information is, of course, National Vulnerability Database run by NIST. And if you have an automated vulnerability scanner, good for you. They already fed, the database is already fed in most of them, in all of them, because otherwise they're irrelevant. And they will just show you that you have this and those vulnerabilities, and you need to mitigate them, especially if they are exposed to the broader audience. Of course, there is CISO. What is CISO? That's what every country should have. About Ukraine one day have something of this sort. This is a national cybersecurity agency in the US that is sending alerts and notifications and instructing people on what to do if a global malware pandemic is moving their way, right? Unfortunately, the best analogy we have is CERT, Ukrainian CERT, and every country has it. Unfortunately, CERT cannot regulate anything. They just alert. They cannot say, guys, you have a week until Friday in order to patch all your Microsoft Exchange installations, for instance, or VMware vCenter, right? These guys can. These guys can, they can penalize you if you are a government employee or a government contractor if you don't. So this is a very, very efficient tool, and the US invests enormous amount of money into this, and the results of its actions are public. So this is publicized. You just subscribe to them or follow them on social media, and you are staying aware of everything happening and what are the indicators of compromise and the other valuable bits and pieces of data. Now to the dark side of things. Yeah, of course, there are market analysts. Yeah, and Forrester is one of the leading firms in this area, and they are selling their reports. Yeah, and the reports are based on, they are biased towards what we call top 1% of most profitable businesses in the world, but you can expect very similar risk profiles everywhere now, because no one actually bothers knowing you as a target before attacking you nowadays, right? So this is also valuable. And of course, Gartner. Yeah, even next level of the next level, which is still nice to know and keep in your zone of situational awareness and be aligned with anytime they issue something new, threat or incident related. Okay, these were data sources.
Yeah, before we move forward to the like real life indicators of effective cybersecurity program, I wanted, if you will allow me, from the practical side, right? Having so much the data sources actually for me is a pleasure right now. When I started my career a few years ago or even more, we had very few examples of public information of the data breaches, and actually even standards were not there, or just freshly baked. And we used them to justify somehow the recommendations we issued. Now it's easy. I mean, a lot of sources, but what you should look there for? If you will recall the formula, you need the calculation of a loss, and you need the probability. For probability, if you compare it to real life or nature life example, let's say hurricane. So the probability comes from the occurrences in the past, and the loss comes from the examples of the loss. In our case, it's a bit more difficult. Why? Because probability is the multiplication of two, the probability of attack and that you're vulnerable. And what you see in the reports is actually this already like multiplied probability. Don't forget about it. And also don't forget to understand the population. So if you, for example, see, I know, 100 of realized ransomware attacks, calculate this not as a just 100 cases, but 100 cases per and some population in the industry, I know, per 10,000 companies or something like this. And then this will be probably a good indicator of the probability of this type of attack in your industry or your region. And that's, again, the multiplied probability of the attack and that you're vulnerable, because the attack may be happening each day, but some of the companies are not vulnerable. And about the how to fetch these losses from the statistics, probably you can do some analogy or extrapolation. Let's say you know that the Maersk company suffered from NotPetya, right? And you know that they calculated their losses already. So you have the figures, 300 million. And you know that Maersk earns 30-something billion per year. So actually you can understand that the loss was 1% of their revenue, roughly. And if you're a logistic company, well, maybe not that big as Maersk, but still, you probably can take this indicator and apply to yourself. So you would lose 1% of your revenue in case such attack happens. So actually you can fetch all these bits of information from those sources we provided to you, but be a little bit critical. I mean, to differentiate what applies to you and what does not. Because if you just take everything, probably would come up with the conclusion that you shouldn't do anything because you will be hacked anyway, which maybe not be far from the reality. Conclusion, not
conclusion. Yeah. So this brings up.
It's a joke. Don't read it.
Of course it is.
Just for the records.
Yeah. So next time you apply for a job, make sure they have psychoanalysts in their package. It's also a joke. Don't take it seriously. But again, yeah. So the first thing that you have to remember as a CISO, professionals do not think about not getting hacked. Professionals carry out stuff, carry out procedures in order to stop staying hacked. Yeah. So your perception that incident cannot, if you're a CISO, your belief in the probability of incident not happening is long gone. Most probably it's way before you have become CISO, you have got rid of this misconception. Okay, so let's now look into what we as a company, so this is our, like, I wouldn't say it's know-how, but it's generalization of our observations. Yeah, what we see as good indications that you have put your money into the right place when it comes to security investment. So first, yeah, obvious. Everyone gets hacked and you don't. Remember NotPetya. The percentage of banks that fell under this so-called crypto ransomware, but in fact, cyber weapon, sorry, Kaspersky style, cyber weapon is high. Yeah, and the percentage that didn't is low. Why? Because they were ready. Being ready to NotPetya proved to be like really simple. and really cheap. This wasn't like enormous amount of money. This was following the basics. But number of companies that did those basics was very, very low. Why? Because they still believe that they are living in the cyber paradise where no one and nothing can harm them for a simple reason. No one bothers targeting them. The new reality, as I already mentioned, is that no one cares who you are. You are first getting hacked, and then they think about how to get how you get this monetized. The first thing they will do, they will try to steal your money. If they can't, they will try to extort you for money, right? So if you don't have anything valuable, they still will break you, they will harm you, they will encrypt everything and demand Bitcoins. So this is how it works. And the people who will hack you are not the same people who will steal your money, and definitely not the same people who will then distort you. Yeah, and there are many other ways to monetize your infrastructure, like sending spam or torrenting child porn or whatever, right? So there are many ways that can harm you once you get hacked, and simply thinking that you will get hacked with very low probability is not a good security strategy. But if you don't for a long time get hacked, it's a very good indicator of that you are doing something very, very right. Okay, next. It's like a next level. It's like thinking on another level. You not only just not get hacked, you constantly try to find indications of you being hacked and you fail. Okay, so this demands, of course, a much stronger and much more robust and mature approach to cybersecurity controls. It demands discipline. It demands, of course, more investment in the first case. So you need to have processes around periodic or continuous attempts to identify breaches and dealing with them, right? And when you start doing it, you will find a lot of breaches, most probably. And with time, you will deal with most of them. And with time, you will see that this number of breaches identified or attempts to breach you identified down, and this will be another metric. Everyone got hacked. This I assure you of. If you do anything interesting, remotely, merely interesting, you most probably will be hacked. And chances are you already have been. Just for the sake of your trust, of the trust that others have in yourself, right? Using you in order to get others hacked is maybe the best way to capitalize on hacking you. And we will talk about we'll talk about it more when we get to insurance. Point 3, you pay others, which means Berezha Security Group, to hack you, and they have hard time doing it. Yeah, so again, us or any other pen tester qualified enough to simulate, to reasonably and optimally, again, simulate a real world cyber threat, do it against you, and they meet controls sufficient to stop them from moving into your infrastructure and harming your business. Okay, again, this won't happen, as in the second point, it won't happen from the first year. Most probably your first attempt at hacking yourself, at hiring pen testers, will be a fiasco, right? They will give you a long report with many dark secrets that you didn't know about yourself, but at the same time, they will give you hints and practical recommendations on how to improve. And the next time they come, they will find less vulnerabilities and ways to hack you. And the next time they come, they will find even fewer ways to breach you. And in this way, you will approach circularly, you will spiral down to the point where you will be pretty much sure that these particular guys cannot hack you. Then what you do is you find other guys. And this is how you go on. Without this input into your security management system, you never know whether you can be hacked because you never tried to do that. others tried to do that, but they didn't produce a report. If you try to do that in a controlled manner and you hire top experts to do that, in this way, you will be able to simulate an attack and to see how you can withstand it. I'm not talking about sophisticated threat teaming exercises, continuous pen testing services that you can consume at high rates and in different areas of the world, but at least you can try to hack yourself and see what happens. You will be surprised in any case if you never did that. Point 4, now we get to the people who are really good in counting and assuming the risks. Yeah, so all this higher level math, yeah, all this mathematics that Andrei made you familiar with, it is their job and they are really good at it. And they get hacked, like badly. And most ransomware attacks that get to the media happen because insurers get hacked and then hackers get information about what clients they have and to what coverages they have been insured by these insurance companies. Yeah, and then they target those clients. This is how it works. So being in security business doesn't guarantee you won't get hacked. And this is a good example of that. But when we talk about this particular indicator of effectiveness, efficiency of security investment, we are talking about something else. So premiums go high. Long story short, they grow, okay? And they have grown 18% globally already for cyber insurance, I mean, and for 27% in the United States. And it doesn't stop just because insurance companies withdraw from covering ransomware incidents. They just cannot do that anymore. Many of them just stop paying out, like AXA did, and got hacked right after that. Why? Because they got hacked 2 years ago. Yeah, and just got ransomware when they told everyone publicly that they won't cover this part of their package anymore. So this is what's happening. In the end, the cyber insurance that you may or may not have already is a thing that you should have, yeah, and you should want to have, but it gets more and more expensive each day because, yeah, a couple of years ago, incidents happened much rarely, and their impact was much lower. Now the world is changing, and the insurance companies are trying to keep up. So the good indicator is that once you get engaged with an insurance company and they assess your level of controls over cyber risks, they offer you a package that has much lower premiums than other companies like yours. You see that, right? Or much higher coverage. So they give you much better deal than they normally offer. And they do. They really do. They do that not only on the basis of self-assessment that you fill in an Excel spreadsheet and send over to them. They even hire companies like ours in order to go in the field and assess the controls and see your security systems, how they work and operate for reals. Yeah. And then based on our third-party independent opinion, offer you the coverage and the premium. This is, I personally believe that this is how the cybersecurity industry will be regulated very, very soon. But yeah, it's a long-standing dream of mine. Let's wait and see what happens. And number 5 is the saddest of all. When you finally and ultimately get hacked, you are so cool, you are so prepared, you are so well positioned, and you have everything in place that it doesn't harm you a lot. Yeah, it's not a big deal. So this may sound like my naive fantasy, but that's what's happening in large corporations that are mature enough in order to withstand any incident without serious harm. They have zero trust networks. They have everything backed up. And the worst thing that can happen to them is some PR damage that they will manage because they already have an A4 sheet of paper in the on the table of their CEO ready to read it out on the camera, right? So that's quite fantastic, it may seem, at least, but this is what's happening to the companies that get hacked and are ready for that. Okay, then, so what you should do. This is how we come to the main concept around what we do in our company as third parties. We basically, in a very general, we help companies threat model. We came from the future in order to save you from security incidents. How did we do that? We don't have a time machine. We have a threat modeling machine. We imagine hacks that happen to you, and we help imagine things, bad things that happen to you in the future. And with this knowledge of your possible futures, we get back to reality and we help you decide what you do with those futures, right? This is why we do AppSec, pen testing, not because it's the sexiest part of this job, cybersecurity, right? No, because it can produce the most positive impact on our clients. We get with this knowledge today together with you, and we apply it in order for you to avoid bad futures and to lure more positive futures. How do we do that? We simply follow these 4 steps that are well known to anyone who threat model, and basically everyone should. So if you didn't until now, do it with us today. So first, we identify what's going on in the business and what's the most important part of it. So what is the most important part of your business model? What gives you revenue if you are a business? What executes your mission if you are a nonprofit? What serves your people if you're a government entity, right? So what's the mission you take on when you do your operations? Yeah, we have to learn that in a very big detail in order to be efficient in the rest of these steps. But yeah, we spend a lot of time and we do that. Then we get to second step. We imagine what can go wrong, what bad can happen to this, what can stop it, what can spoil it, what can destroy it, what can encrypt and ask for Bitcoin or whatever, right? We imagine all those possible futures. Then we think about each of them, of course, in the context of its probability and prioritizing the most probable futures above those that are not that probable. What we can do with that in terms of how can we lower the probability of that future, or how can we lower the impact of incidents happening in those scenarios in the future, right? Either risk goes down when either expected loss goes down or probability goes down. And the probability, of course, is this happening to you, yeah, multiplied by this happening to you successfully. Then with all this registry or just notes on the data flow diagram or spreadsheet or an online threat modeling automation system, whatever our clients choose to support this process with, we go to the 4th step, which is testing and checking and verifying whether we did a good job. First, of course, planning how we test it, and then, of course, simulating all those bad things happening to you, not in the future, but today, and seeing whether you are ready to withstand those types of attack. As simple as that. No black magic, no breaking general relativity, yeah, and other areas of physics. It's just common sense and a realistic skeptical approach to what people do and how successful they are at that. Okay, so with this, I think I will pass the mic back to Andrei and ask him to introduce what we as a company and a team of experts can be can be of help to you as our clients.
Yeah, thank you. A little bit of advertising from our side, but I think we deserved it. Having been talking for the whole hour already. So yeah, what we can do in the connection to what we discussed today and how we can help. First of all, if all this planning and budgeting and justifying of security investment is still rocket science for you, or maybe it's not your just key activity you'd like to focus on, we can do this consulting for you. So build the budget or the plan or the program for building the information security management system in your organization together with you, and actually guide you, lead you through this journey. So that's the consulting part we do. In case you need, you may be a subject for some compliance due to your geography, industry, or whatever, maybe your customer requests. And the compliance may be huge as the SOCs or even smaller one, but still required by the vendor which you work with, like Amazon or Google. Then we are here to help you prepare. We do not do the qualified audits. I mean, for example, we are not USAs, or we are not doing the certification usually within these frameworks, but we've worked as a team with them quite heavily throughout our experience, and we can make you prepared so that the actual audit costs you less. So cumulatively, you will spend less having the proper consultancy for the preparation. And now the key, of course, the application security and the penetration testing. So we've touched this in the previous slides to like show you where you have vulnerabilities and where you can get hacked before you actually get hacked. And yeah, help you to remediate whatever vulnerability or whatever loophole we find in your security. And as practice shows, the weakest point in the chain is our people, the human nature. So you may have a very strong automated controls, but still the human part may spoil the whole party. So you need to train your people, and we do these trainings, the general awareness and tailored to your needs, actually, with using your particular business case, your particular brand attributes if needed, and so on. So like showing how your employees can be approached by social engineering and so on. And it can be also a more technical for your developers. We have this training as well. And it also can be, even if you would want to become a penetration tester, we have this program as well, just finishing the current group, and we'll be doing the next one for sure. So this, in short, are what we can do to improve the efficiency of your investments together with us. I probably will not continue the bragging, because yeah, we can talk about ourselves even more than we talked about the investments. But I think for now, that's the good portion of information for you to think about. And Natalia, I think you would want to also tell where to find us, right? See this QR code, so probably that's.
But before, I just want to mention that we have a question and answers section after this, and in a couple of minutes. So we have also a function of you can join us by voice or message us in the bottom of your screen. So, and if you will go through this link, you will find our report with the projects and the clients' reviews and our security findings we find in our clients during the previous year. And this report is really the helpful source with information about how we run our business and how we do our projects and how effective they are and what the average meanings and average data. You can find everything here. So just click or scan the QR code, and you will find lots of useful things. And actually, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, just a couple of possible data points you can find there. Like how many bugs we find on average when we do a pen test, for instance, or how many bugs of high risk or critical risk you can find. So, for instance, we find a critical vulnerability in every second project. So not in every second, but like with a probability of 50%. So there can be 2 criticals and then 4 projects with no criticals, or they can be 1 on average in every second project, and so on. If you are operating in the verticals that we have many clients in, for instance, almost half of our clients are in IT product development, and the other half is split between IT services, banking, fintech, and so on. So you can just extrapolate those results and see what you could expect from a project run by our team against your infrastructure or your software solution. So this is why we publish it, and yeah, it's really useful. Of course, it doesn't contain any identifiable information about our clients. If you thought that, yeah, I have to. Why did I do that? Chances were that you could download that report for the sake of knowing the details about our clients, but yeah, now you will know. Okay, so I think this wraps up the main part of our event. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand and ask them by voice, or just type them down into the chat or Q&A.
We can also make some networking, or like get acquainted here, and you can tell us of what you do and what your position is, and maybe you have some challenges. So feel free to message.
And if
But
you want
for
to
the
do
networking, probably we'll need to. We
yeah,
have...
stop recording. Stop recording. If you want us to stop recording and go off record, no problem with that. Yeah, okay. So Alexei Bulanov is asking, in the investment amount formula, you multiply the loss expectation by the 2 probabilities and then by 0.37. But 37% is the upper limit. So as far as I understand, we should multiply the loss expectation by the 2 probabilities and then compare the result with the loss expectation multiplied by 0.30 or not. I will try to take this on. Andrei, please correct me if I'm wrong. So Gordon-Loeb puts an upper limit to what you should invest into protect an asset against a specific incident scenario. You do not compare to it. You just try to keep it lower than that, right? Andrei is not.
So his question to me.
Approvingly.
Yeah. That's how it's presented by Gordon-Loeb. So in this case, that's why we multiplied, because you have the value of asset or potential total loss. Then you have the probability of the attack, probability that it's successful. So there's the expected loss, and then you multiply it by 37%, or 0.37, and that's the limit of your investment to protect from this particular scenario.
Another thought, there is a possible ambiguity here, but now when I read the question, I understand that if you don't know that theory, you just may think so. So the Gordon-Loeb model gives you an answer to question, where should I stop investing? Okay. So this is where you stop, at 37% of expected loss multiplied by complex probability. Yeah. Okay, means that we have successfully attempted to answer this question. Okay, any other questions? If by voice, please raise your hand. I don't know whether I will see it. Most probably will.
Yeah, you should. There was also a comment from COS with the link of new Verizon report.
Yeah, so the latest.
Yeah, I think it's useful. We can incorporate this into our slides.
Yeah, you have to use it.
But the only thing, it was a message to panelists, so the other people don't see it. Probably, if we want to forward it to everyone, we need somehow to.
I will right now.
Yeah, to repost it.
I opened it instead. Okay, so this is the link to PDF. without those pesky contact collecting forms that Natalie is so fond about. Yeah, that's a mandatory marketing lady joke that we need to execute during the webinar. Okay, any more questions? If you are typing in a question and you just need more time to do that, please select your text, cut it with Control and X, then type plus and hit enter, and then Control plus V and continue typing. Because this happens.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So we run very short in this section, like with security, functionality, and usability triangle, and with security, that one. So I just want to ask of how it could be used on practice, and maybe you know some examples in like useful cases, and of how the client can shift his priorities and what's the affordable the affordable shift.
As a third-party service provider, we always repeat this mantra: you will never have as much security as we want for you, and this is a good thing. Yeah, so you have to know how much security you need, and Gordon-Loeb in particular give you a mathematically proven expectation of optimal investment, right? But if it's happening inside, just finishing this thought, the only thing we can do is inform you, right? We are like third-party experts, consultants. You hire us because you either can't or don't want to, or are forced not to do it yourself. Okay, so this is what we do. We just inform you and make your risk decisions informed. We cannot make them reasonable. We cannot make them mature. We cannot make them optimal or whatever. We can only make them informed, and we inform. We give you information. That's it. We can insist that you have to do that or have to do this, but in the end of the day, it's up to the risk owner to decide what to do. And this is what they have to do. And when the consultants is in, the consultants are in the equation, that's where it normally stops. But if it's an inside job, yeah, if it's an internal CISO, authorized and given budget and given formal authority and this and that, they risk to be overly suggestive, right? They want to take this on as their mission and enforce everyone to behave in the most secure possible manner in the situations that do not demand that. Yeah, and then they are overly enforcive. Yeah, when they push too much, this will harm the business, and this normally does. Best case scenario is those CISOs are fired, and they learned from experience, and next time they are more reasonable in their suggestions. Worst case scenario, and I met situations like this, business is harmed. Like, they don't go out of business, but they have financial struggles, I would say. So as a CISO inside the company, a person must be very, very objective, very reasonable. And this is why we advise to use this math, because this is what adjusts your perceptions, your biases to the reality. This is a very important thing to do, because otherwise you're just driven by your experience, which is not a very good driver, because experiences are very, very unique in each case, and they do not prove anything normally. Yeah. So the worst thing you can say in support of your opinion is I've seen it by my own eyes. Yeah. So you need to use some meaningful, reasonable arguments, and the mathematical calculations have proven to be very meaningful and reasonable. Yes, so in order to stay within the boundaries of optimal investment, you have to use this math and not raise your flag above all other flags in your company, because otherwise you will just harm them. You get the resources for your goals and drain them out of the resources. And as Andrei has repeated multiple times through this webinar, normally it's a cost, and security is sunk cost, and you never get it back. So you will just not get the revenue you could get by investing these figures into other places. And it will harm your mission, whatever it is. So this is how I spent 5 minutes of our precious time to answer the question you almost asked. Okay, so do we have any more questions? No. So I think
no.
yeah.
Maybe it's one thought is because we've incorporated some of the answers we had in the previous session in Ukrainian into our speech already. I would like to hope that it's the reason.
Yeah, I hope it is. Otherwise, we will be very grateful for your questions that you will leave in the comments to this YouTube video, or send us otherwise via social media or by our email. You can reach us by these means. You can find us on social media, or you can just drop us an email at hello@bsg.tech. Okay, then. So if that's it. Let's wrap it up. Let's thank you to everyone who came. Thank you to everyone who is still. Oh well, we still have 10 people, which is great. Thank you very much. Let's keep in touch, and follow us in order not to miss the future webinars.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and have a nice evening, day, or whatever, wherever you are.
Yeah.
And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.